Welcome to the chapter 259 review. The chapter was as fire as usual, and I think really every single part of it held strong, with the pacing being so perfect that I genuinely believe we've gotten damn near 2 chapters in one. Surviving the Flames alone could have been its own chapter, and with that said, you guys know the usual. I'll break down the chapter as I bring it to life and make things easier for you to understand, while performing a bit of analysis and diving into some parts. And I value the time of both you and I, so without further ado, feel free to leave a like and subscribe, and let's get straight into the chapter. The chapter opens up with a flashback, which is surprising considering the massive cliffhanger we were left on before, but it's important, so it's whatever. The blood manipulation trio, Kamo, Choso, and YUJI, are all engaged in training. Choso asks YUJI if he knows how to use convergence, and he basically responds by saying no. I had to swap bodies with Yuta and Kusakabe, and since neither one of them know how to use blood manipulation, I'm gonna have to learn it and fast. Choso tries to explain to YUJI, but he just can't. I'm pretty sure this is because he was born being able to just use it. Kind of like how Gojo was so talented that he couldn't really teach techniques all that well either. And Kamo takes over from there. As he breaks it down, he says that it's similar to the sensation that goes through your body when putting yourself in hot water and the heat gradually spreading throughout. The basis of blood manipulation is imagining your blood vessels extending and creating a silhouette of the body similar to the sensation previously mentioned. He goes on to say that convergence is a technique that compresses your blood, and it's a good idea to develop the sensation of holding larger objects in your hands by rolling up sponges and paper in one go. The purpose of that is to get the feeling of crumpling something with your hands, as that's what using blood manipulation seems to feel like when it comes to, I guess, converging it to piercing blood and anything like that involving your hands. And Kamo's doing a really good job here, and I'm sure he was trained to use his own technique very similar to the way he's teaching YUJI now in the Kamo clan. Choso then asks YUJI to teach him about Supernova because he obviously wants to contribute to YUJI's training, but Kamo's like, nah, YUJI needs to learn how to reinforce his defense before stepping into the offensive territory. He needs to learn how to stop bleeding and make sutures because blood manipulation is only going to serve as, again, a defensive measure. I like this little detail of blood manipulation originally serving as just an extra defensive technique for YUJI in this battle, but as we can see in 251, YUJI does manage to pull off the Supernova, which shows that he can use it offensively as well. And I guess YUJI was able to surpass all expectations per usual. We then move on from one explanation to another. Massive info dump chapter, but you guys been asking for this for years, so I don't want to hear any complaining. We finally get the explanation behind Sukuna's flames. To massively shorten this, these flames are only able to be used by Sukuna after he has used both cleave and dismantle on you, as both of these slashes are literally referred to as the preparation of his food. Upon preparing said food, the door of the furnace will be opened, allowing him to literally cook the opponent. The flames of the furnace usually have no speed and a very limited range. To solve these problems, Sukuna would impose a binding vow on himself. When faced against more than one person in any given battle, he cannot access this technique with the exception of opening the furnace inside of his domain. Before calling this Nazgul, this binding vow was placed when he obtained the technique a long time ago obviously. This is not just something he made on the spot. But to continue, since curse techniques are typically expanded within domain expansions, the same will apply to Sukuna's flames. So everything that has been turned into dust by both his cleave and dismantle within the domain expansion are matted with an explosive curse energy equivalent to that of these flames. Sukuna also has changed the specifications of this barrier, allowing only living beings to enter and by proxy, keeping the area of effect of his entire domain expansion sealed without reducing the normal output of curse energy. And as Sukuna's preparation of this technique is finally completed, we come back to Uraume and Hakari, as Uraume now claims their victory. And lastly, YUJI, who's on the receiving end, stares at the flames in bewilderment. The flame is then shot, and a massive explosion overtakes the entire battlefield as the explanation continues. The dust that was formed from the destruction that Malevolent Shrine has caused has been transformed into a thermobaric explosive cloud that will spread to all corners of the domain expansion. And due to the heat of the flames that will come from the furnace, a high temperature shockwave with an instantaneous and explosive transmission combined with the instant compression and decompression of shockwaves will lead to the death of all living things that are within this domain expansion. For this is the final secret technique of Ryomen Sukuna, who annihilated Mahoraga with one blow during the Shibuya incident. This flame's effect and the domain expansion seemed to work similarly to a dust explosion. And this explanation also breaks down why the effects of the flames were so different when it came to both Jogo and Maharaga. As for Jogo, it seemed to have only burned him alive, whereas for Maharaga, it made that massive explosion that basically annihilated Shibuya. Within Sukuna's domain expansion, these flames seem to serve as a short-hit cluster bomb that will go off after Sukuna has finished slashing his opponents, if he chooses to unleash it. It's also then explained why it wasn't used during the fight against Gojo, and it's because of all the changes that Sukuna was making on the settings of his barrier, and the constant reductions in the range of the effect would, according to TCB, keep the furnace cooled, not allowing Sukuna to have the freedom to unseal its flames. I guess you can also make the argument for 226 that Gojo managed to recover his curse technique before Sukuna could finish slashing him up and preparing the dust to be exploded, which explains why he didn't use it at that moment. However, I don't really know. What I do know is y'all about to be arguing in the comments and I'm here for it. Give me that engagement. Oh yeah, one last thing about this segment is that people are saying Hakari and Uraume in this chapter seem to be continuing from their conversation in 252, which if true is pretty damn interesting because this means that Hakari was saying that he felt Sukuna only getting weaker and weaker either during Sukuna's fight with Yuji and Ino or the previous chapter, and now he's just starting to go all out according to Uraume. If this is true, Gege seems to have pulled off a big screwball red herring. As we move on from the explanation of the furnace, we see Yuji and Choso call out for one another within the explosion, and then we cut to Choso shielding Yuji with his blood. Yuji tells him to stop as Choso speaks about being useless in training due to being somebody who does things instinctively, and Yuji calls for his name. As we see Choso burnt to a crisp, Yuji says, "Instinctively, huh?" We enter what I'll refer to as the cursed round, where Yuji and Choso are having one last conversation before Choso passes away. Choso says that Yuji was able to learn the reverse curse technique very quickly, and to that, Yuji says that Sukuna used it in his body, so it wasn't really him who learned it. Choso's like, nah, don't do that, bro, it's alright. You're the youngest, and the youngest always has to surpass the oldest. Yuji says, even if this is true, that doesn't mean I have to abandon you, right? And Choso's like, that's right. I also owe Yuki an apology. I think he may have seen Yuki as an older sister since Yuji's quote reminds him of her, or this could be a callback to what Yuki told him before he tried to sacrifice himself while fighting Kenjaku. Anyways, Choso asks Yuji for forgiveness since he's leaving him on his own again. Yuji's like, what are you talking about? You were there for me at my lowest point and that's more than enough. And Choso agrees with that, saying it's true. We then see the original three brothers as wombs, and Eso says, big brother, are you there? Choso affirms this. Kachizo then says, brother, I'm cold, and Choso finally says it's okay. Let's talk for a while. If we talk, the cold won't bother us. Could it be that our 150 years were just a few days for Yuji? And after this, we see Choso burnt to a crisp inside of the blood as he thanks Yuji one last time for being his little brother. And we finally see Yuji outright say, big brother, thank you. I think this is the first time that Yuji has ever addressed Choso as big brother 2 directly, instead of just telling somebody this is my big brother or whatever. He finally says it. And now we have another sacrifice for Yuji's sake. And this one hits really hard because Yuki did tell Choso to not sacrifice himself against Kenjaku as he still had Yuji left in his life, and she was correct. As the barrier crumbles and a wasteland surrounds Yuji, he asks where everyone has gone, and we see the silhouette of Sukuna within the smoke that surrounds Yuji. The narrator says that Yuji had convinced himself that he was nothing but a cog, a part that will be able to play its role no matter the circumstances. And Yuji at this moment was supposed to continue to fight Sukuna for the sake of avenging Choso, but the scorched earth before his eyes, the heat surrounding him, and the thin air shook the foundation of his determination. I'll get into this quote later, but we see a foot peek through, and Sukuna with the coldest panel in the series walks through the smoke, and Yuji makes it even colder by yelling his name out of rage. We then see another figure through the smoke though, and it's Todo. He's finally made his return onto the battlefield as he seems to have his arm wrapped in a massive bandage. Interestingly enough, this seems to be a parallel to Sukuna's domain expansion during Shibuya, and like before, it wavers Yuji's resolve just a bit. Even while contemplating the belief of many of his friends dying in that attack though, You gotta notice that Yuji did not just completely break down here as he did before. I'm gonna attribute that to not only his growth as a person, but also the extra post-mortem curse Higuruma had placed on him, which is just like the rest of his curses, pushing him to always move forward no matter what. On top of all of this, we have Todo now to not only keep Yuji on his toes, but to lock in. I mean, they automatically lock in when working together because Yuji has to instinctively calculate how Todo will boogie woogie him. So, perfect time to show up, bro. Anyway, we get into a flashback with Mei Mei and Todo, and this is the type of shit y'all was accusing of Naruto doing. We got like 3 flashbacks this chapter. Anyways, they create a plan for Todo to boogie woogie everybody inside of Sukuna's domain expansion with Mei Mei's crows outside. Todo's rationalizing all this like it's a domain of immediate death with no guarantee that they're gonna make it out alive, so doing something like this is obviously better than doing nothing. Mei Mei's asking if he could do it with that messed up arm, and Todo's saying he's unsure, but he can feel that the technique is alive. I guess dude was exaggerating about it being dead or something. You know how Todo just be yapping about shit. Todo's like, don't let Yuji know of the plan they just went over due to the resonance, or in other words, Yuji and Sukuna's connection being so deep that Todo believes Yuji unconsciously leaked the plan to Sukuna's side when he came to their mission on Yasuhachi Bridge, this being due to the fingers inside of Yuji resonating with the one in the wild. Mei Mei affirms this, and Todo tells her to tell Yuta to execute his plan before he would have to save everyone from Sukuna's domain. And I guess this was another reason that Yuta was rushing so hard to defeat Sukuna before he can activate his domain expansion, although the very obvious reason is what's going on currently. Todo also says that they shouldn't tell Yuji about what's going on, and Mei Mei just cuts him off, saying that her mouth will stay shut. That's why Mei Mei didn't join the fight at any point, and this seems to be why, because if she did, she wouldn't be able to activate this plan with Todo in the event that the worst case scenario came into play. However, there's a chance she could come in later, who knows, I think that she will though. And Obara fans are definitely up too, y'all up right now. As this conversation wraps up, it's said that Todo was accompanied by Yuta to adjust and fine-tune the curse technique, and even Todo can't verify the safety of the other characters. And then Itadori and Choso, who were in the center of the domain expansion, could not be captured by him. It's said that Todo cannot inform Yuji of all this because there just isn't enough time to tell him. And it brings us back to the present, where Todo said sorry, but maybe it's okay, maybe they're all alive. And Yuji's like, bruh, are you serious? Like, what do you mean maybe? But they both kind of reasoned that there's nothing they can do because this isn't the time to mourn, they have to fight Sukuna right now. Because as of this moment, Sukuna is massively weakened due to just activating that domain expansion. So on top of all his current debuffs, now he's on cooldown when it comes to activating his curse technique. Yuji and Todo charge towards Sukuna as he welcomes them with open arms, and the next battle begins. Somehow, Sukuna is extra confident here, but he's probably gonna pull out the 10 shadows. With that, the chapter concludes. To get right into the ending, I think it's so realistic and this is what manga needs. I'd be wondering how characters just break down entire plans in front of enemies, be talking in front of dude for 5 minutes straight while he's just standing right in front of them. Todo in this instance just says, believe me bro, we don't gotta talk, we need to fight right now, like fuck all that other shit. We need to fight right now. Hey, don't even ask questions. I really appreciate that. It makes things seem way more dire and urgent and realistic. This chapter was honestly as good as the rest have been this arc. I'd say it's a top 5 contender for the entire Shinjuku Showdown arc. I want to say that I do think Sukuna is firstly back in a better state than he was before the domain expansion, but he can't use Shrine, so it balances out. I say this because when he does come out of that dust cloud, his hands seem to be in great shape. Choso's death also hit me kind of hard for a character I've always felt a little bit positive toward, like just above indifferent. Really well done. The entire flashback before death stuff just never fails to hit in this series. I don't know what it is, but I'd be lying if I said I was really sad or anything. Few parts of it just hit me kind of hard because I hold the same philosophy when it comes to my siblings.
You stop accusing Steve. He isn't laughing at you.
Look at him, he's laughing, bro. Oh my god, bro. My god, bro.
As for what I think of the Todo return, just take a look at my recent videos and you already know why I'm type mad he slid into the story out of all times. But it's straight. Sometimes we gotta just take the L and move on, that's life. I still think it was a solid video though. I personally think that he's gonna stick around until the end of the battle, as he's coming into this fresh, and everybody else has been fighting Sukuna for a while and they're still here. So I think Todo can make it to the end. The only way I see all this finally ending is everybody stalling until Yuta gets back. People are gonna say I'm glazing, but I've been saying Yuta's gonna close out this fight alongside YUJI for a minute. It's the only way I can see this ending. With that said, you guys know how this goes. I have a couple of discussion videos on the chapter coming through, but if you have any topics y'all want me to cover, bring them down below and I'll look at them. You guys know I check the comments. With that said, thank you so much for watching per usual. I always appreciate the love and support. And I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace out.